Hey there, I am Christie Ruffino, former broke single mom turned CEO of 2 six-figure businesses and best-selling author with 15 books. But it wasn't always like this. Not long ago, I was a hot mess. Yes, I did a lot of things right, but mostly I was throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what would stick. Fast forward past many failed attempts and a few incredible victories, I not only get to share what I've learned along the way, I get to bring together top influencers as they share their empowering stories, insider secrets, and valuable resources that can be used right now to step into your power. So, if you're an ambitious entrepreneur, or possibly one in the making, and you're looking to create a business and life that lights you up, well, then you're in the right place. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Mastery Unleashed podcast. This is Christie Ruffino, and I have the pleasure of interviewing one of my friends today. And I will tell you, this wasn't pre-planned, not at all. Now, I've known this guest for a while, and I've always been highly impressed about her business acumen, how she has created a thriving business out of nothing in an industry that's very unique. And I know a little bit about her personal life and her beautiful home and how she was able to put everything together in that path. I'm not going to dive into those details, but she's just a fascinating woman. And let's see, not even 5 days ago, I had the misfortune of being in the path of the Florida hurricane. And of course, that sent my life kind of in a tizzy. And my house here was all of a sudden came to a screeching halt. And the whole day that hit us, I had back-to-back podcast interviews. And unfortunately, the interviews I did record got stuck on my computer. I wasn't able to get them processed in time for the next show. But I could say fortunately, because in the middle of the power outage and the disconnected from society and all of the crazy things that happens when you're in a disaster like this, my other friend and I decided, well, we're going to hightail out of here, get in our car and drive up to a friend in Florida who isn't as bad as we are. And so we picked up the phone, said, hey, Shannah, can we come hang out with you for a few days? Now, we didn't know how long we were going to be there. All we knew is that she had a working household. She had power, at least she had a generator that gave her power, and she was able to kind of continue to live her life, where if we stayed here, we were basically trapped in a dark house with no working utilities of any kind. And so we took what we thought was the path of least resistance, and heck, we'll have a little bit of fun while we're at it. And while I was there, I thought, oh my gosh, Shannah would be an amazing guest on my show. And I asked her, and she said, no. She kind of said, well, what am I going to talk about? Nobody wants to hear about this. She's like, this is just what I do. And isn't that what we all think, right? We do something so well that it has become second nature for us. And we don't really kind of see the value that we hold for others if we're able to share a little bit of that wisdom. And so today, you have the honor, and I have the pleasure of being able to introduce and interview Shannah Butcher. Shannah Butcher. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? Shannah Butcher. And she is a national certified guardian, Aging Life Care Association member, and she is what do they call it? She is a fiduciary. So I didn't even know what a fiduciary was, but we're going to talk about that in the interview coming up. She has a lot of amazing credentials. You can read all about her, her experience, her education in the show notes below. But I want you to know is that her goal of being on the show today has nothing to do with getting new business, because she does not get new business from the average person. She typically gets her new clients through attorney referrals, because working with an attorney is the first step of the process. And then once you, as a person who's aging, I know who's aging, we don't want to admit that, but we all are. But once we get some of these things taken care of, that attorney will know if it's the right move to contact Shannah or somebody like Shannah. And again, her motivation for being on the show has nothing to do with getting new business. It's to simply create awareness around this whole dilemma of aging without having things in place, so you can save your family members and maybe even yourself some stress and grief in the future just by doing a few things now. So listen to today's show. We had a lot of fun preparing for the episode. We had a lot of fun recording it, and she is going to share some great information with you and tell you what to do to make sure you're able to avoid family stress and bad decisions when you prepare to age gracefully. So, without further ado, I am going to bring on Shannah Butcher.
Do you want to activate your story in business? Would you like to follow Christie Ruffino's step-by-step process to leverage your story and get more clients and make more money? Well, you're in luck, my friend, because after years of development, Christie is holding a virtual 2-hour workshop to walk you through the same system she has used with hundreds of her clients. People who now have 7-figure businesses, speak internationally, and are making a massive impact in the world through the power of their story. By registering and showing up for her Story Activation Clinic, you will walk away with a signature story that will change the course of your business, your life, and most importantly, the lives of so many others. Plus, by taking action today, you get Christie's Story Brand Bio Template to further clarify your message and enhance your brand. Visit www.activatemystory.com for event details and to register.
Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited about today's interview. I'm going to give you a little backstory. I had the pleasure of spending the last couple of days with Shannah, and I got to know a little bit about her business. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, I've got to get her on our show. So I want to first start by just welcoming you, Shannah, and thanking you for taking time out of your schedule in just a short period of time to be on here, because I think the conversation we're going to have today is going to be so valuable and really, I think, needed by a lot of people, especially with what's happened recently.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're going to have fun. So I've learned a little bit about your business, a fraction, a couple things even happened in your business yesterday that were for me like, holy cow, how do you deal with this on a daily basis? But how did you get in this role of being a professional fiduciary? Did you just wake up one morning when you were in college and think, this is what I'm going to do?
Not at all. I was planning on being a guidance counselor in a school, but I ended up working, I applied for a job for social services, thinking that's a social work type of a position. It turned out it was in a nursing home. I had volunteered in a nursing home in college, so I actually felt pretty comfortable working with that in that environment and with that population. So I ended up working as a long-term care social worker on a 60-bed dementia and Alzheimer's unit, and I loved it. How many 23-year-olds or 22-year-olds love working with seniors, and especially Alzheimer's and dementia? So I knew that was kind of my passion. We had several guardians and other professional fiduciaries like power of attorneys and trustees who place their individuals in our facility. And I was responsible to work with them, make sure that they had their advance directives in place, make sure that if they wanted to have a DNR, or what kind of wishes did all these individuals have. So because my clients had dementia and Alzheimer's, I was more working with the families and those individuals making the decisions. So I was working with several guardians. I actually ended up being on what's called the examining committee for the court that helped determine whether or not somebody needed a guardian. I also did some part-time work for a guardian doing psychosocial assessments for her clients, not that were in my building, but other facilities, making sure that all their social needs were met. So for several years, I did that. And in 2006, I decided I would like to go out on my own and start. And I started on my kitchen table. I had 2 young children and pregnant with the 3rd child. And in fact, took my 3rd case when I was about to deliver, about 2 weeks before I delivered. Right. So, but started on my kitchen table. Then I hired somebody to help, and then I hired, another person for reception and for filing and those types of things. And now there are 6 of us, and we have over 70 clients, and that's 16 years now that we've been doing this.
Wow. Wow. So that's a great story of how you just kind of like followed your basically the path that you went on. You didn't necessarily choose it, but you realized that you had a gift for it and you stuck with it and you kept going with it. And I know that's a great story on how you got into it and built a really great business around it. But can I ask you, before we get into some of the logistics and some of the teaching tips, could you possibly share a story of one of your clients that demonstrates why doing something like this is so important?
Well, I think so. There's several different ways I could get a client. I could get a client because they absolutely have nobody. They have no family members. They've outlived all their family, or they didn't have children. And so they're kind of abandoned. They're abandoned in nursing homes and assisted living. Nobody to be their advocate, nobody to be their family member, and nobody to make sure that all their needs are met. And we got a client a couple of years ago that all that he wanted was a radio, a simple radio. Of course we got him a radio immediately, and he was just so happy. That made him so happy. They just need simple things. Sometimes it's just, proper clothing and warm clothing. So those are the ones that really strike you, that they just need the simple things in life, and that's what makes them happy, and just to have somebody there, somebody to deliver a Christmas card or stop by and visit them and be by their side through tough things like procedures or big decisions that need to be made for them. So
yeah, that I could imagine that the feeling around that when somebody doesn't have anybody and they don't feel that they're being heard by the staff wherever they're being cared for, and they've got you and your team on their side, and it just feels like that they're loved, right? And they are matter. Yes. They matter at this point in their life. And so we're going to take a little break here in a moment, but I want everybody to stick around because there's a whole layer of what Shannah does that is beyond just caretaking. It's basically making sure that, people, that things go the way they want them to go. And I know she's got some great wisdom and tips that she's going to share with me as well as you as an audience to ensure that as you age and as your family ages, that everything is done ahead of time to ensure that your wishes are carried out. Because I know for me recently, I just went through a big move, and that move kind of created an awareness around my will and that I needed to update it. But that wasn't a very emotional kind of thought for me. And I know a lot of people kind of put off taking care of their estate planning because it's an emotional topic. But it's so important. And I'm hoping today that Shannah is able to share a little bit of light on the subject and make it not so scary, and impress upon everybody that's listening that it's really something that we all should take ownership of and just do it. Because once you do it, it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So if you don't mind, Shannah, just hang tight for a little bit, and audience, just hang tight, and we will be right back. I know. You hear us asking you to subscribe, rate, and review, but what does that really mean? Is it really that important? Well, if other podcast hosts are anything like me, they've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into their show. And personally, I get really discouraged when I have something great to share and no one is listening. Beyond algorithms, ratings and reviews are critical for a show's sustainability. It goes way beyond fanning the flames of our egos, or by getting a little "that a girl" pat on the back. Reviews create social proof and prove that our show has an engaged and loyal following. So, if you like our show, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review. And while you're at it, pick up one of our Overcoming Mediocrity books on Amazon. You'll be glad that you did. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome, Shannah. I just want to start off this second segment because it's a little different than most of my guests that I've had on. Shannah is really kind of educating you so you don't have to call her. And that's the goal. Is she doesn't want people to pick up the phone and be in a desperate situation and have her jump in. We want to make sure that everybody is educated so that they either can get somebody that they trust, a family member or somebody they know, to take care of some of these decisions, or she is hired ahead of time on certain cases. And so that everything is laid out perfectly and there's not a lot of like crazy, basically being reactive. We don't want to be reactive. We want to have everything set out ahead of time so things just flow. So that being said, what the heck is a fiduciary?
Okay, a professional fiduciary is really any individual that's making a decision on someone else's behalf. Most people think of that financially, so like a power of attorney, a trustee, a rep payee of some sort, or a guardian, but it could also be a healthcare surrogate or a healthcare proxy. So those are anyone making decisions on someone else's behalf for their best interest. And that's what, we do. That's what our agency does.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So decision makers, and having somebody that's doing that not from an emotional place, but more of a logical place. So would a family member be a good person to be somebody's fiduciary?
Well, sometimes, but everybody has to think about that individually. Maybe like one child may be very good with money and another child may not be, or maybe maybe zero family members you feel comfortable having be your fiduciary. So you need to go out and seek a professional fiduciary. And same with medical decision making. Can your child or your brother or your sister or a family member, can they handle making the decisions that you want for yourself, not what they want for you, but what you want? And you're going to try to lay all that out ahead of time in your advance directives, to make sure that that's all laid out. But you have to feel confident with these individuals that you name, that they're going to do what you want them to do, and that they're going to be competent at it. And it's not going to be a burden on them.
Right, right. Yeah, and I know when I was working with my attorney recently, and we were talking about this, and I did make a few changes, and her first question was, "Did you ask that person? Do they know?"
I mean,
So,
the responsibility is
it's
huge.
huge,
It's a huge responsibility to
exactly.
take over someone else's decision making.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it's you may think, oh, I trust this person, or I think she'd be great at it, but you definitely have to make sure that they know that is that you're naming them, because there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of not only the decisions, but it's time and dealing with the dynamics of family, which I would imagine would be one of the hardest parts. I know hearing some stories from you just in the last few days, there's a lot of different family dynamics that kick into gear when there's somebody that passed, and especially when there's money involved.
That's right. I mean, you've got to think about all those dynamics. Are the children going to argue, and are they going to? Is it going to disrupt their ability to get along? Would maybe somebody outside of the family who doesn't really have a dog in this fight, that can be objective, better? Is that person better to handle it? So yeah, we see a lot of family dynamics, like you
Yeah,
said, especially when money is involved.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so what happens, because I know there's not everybody is doing what they should, and their plans change and things creep up on us, and we think sometimes we're bulletproof, but we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And so if we don't have this in place and we don't have our advanced directives spelled out, and so say if something happened to me, like what would happen to my estate if I didn't have all of these pieces put into play already?
Well, let's talk about medical decisions, and having what's called advanced directives in place, like your healthcare surrogate chosen. You have a living will explaining what it is that your wishes are. Um, the hospital might receive you, and if you don't have an individual named, there's statutes that they follow. They basically have to go down this list to determine who is going to be your decision maker if you're not able to. So they choose, and that person may not be the person you would ever want for yourself. And
Right.
then financially, they might seek out an attorney or the hospital attorney to look for a guardian, to be appointed through a legal process, a court process, to appoint a guardian. And you would never know this person, or it's a family member that that maybe you wouldn't have chosen. So
Right.
let's get all of these advanced directives in place ahead of time, and what your wishes are ahead of time, so that in the case of an emergency, the hospitals know who to go to, your doctors know who to go to, and they're the ones that you choose, not other people are choosing.
So as far as the advanced directives go, we know that there's a will and we know a living will. And
Mm-hmm.
what other things would we have to, if we're going to make a list of all of the things we have to take care of, is there like a standard 4 or 5 things, or does it depend on what state we live in?
Well, I do think it's probably going to depend on what state you live in. It's going to depend on what your situation is. I would definitely say a living will, a healthcare surrogate, that names an individual that basically backs up that living will. Then you want to have somebody both financially then and medically. So another thing would be like either a power of attorney or a trustee that would oversee your financial affairs. But every state, I like we said, every state is different. And the most important thing is to just pick up the phone and call your local estate planning attorney. And if you don't know of some in your area, you can call your state bar association and get some names of some estate planning. You don't want to go to just a regular estate attorney, a regular practitioner. You don't want to go to a criminal lawyer to have these things done, or a real estate attorney to have these done. You want to go to an estate planning attorney, and it's very simple. Just call and make an appointment, and they're almost like social workers. They sit
Yeah.
down with you and they show you all these things. and they guide you through them and they explain them very well. At least the attorneys that I've worked with in estate planning, they're very much like social workers, and it's just an appointment, and it's very easy.
So what about going on the internet and downloading forms?
Well, I work with a lot of attorneys, and they've shown me the downsides of some of that. But some
Yes,
of them are not terrible. So that's what I'm hearing. I don't know. I'm not an attorney.
correct.
But having a personal relationship or developing a relationship with a local elder law attorney or estate planning attorney is very important. Because your situation is going to change. What if you need Medicaid planning? What if you need a special needs trust for a disabled child? Those forms aren't going to tell you all that. You could save so much money in this planning if you went to the attorney to have them do these things properly. So I have just seen people talk about spend down. Well, don't spend down. Go see it. That's a Medicaid planning or not a Medicaid planning tool. That's just facility might say spend down all your money so you can get Medicaid. Well, you could go to a Medicaid attorney and do all kinds of techniques to preserve your estate for your heirs and for yourself while you're still with us, of course, so that you could have all the benefits of that. So there's so many reasons you should develop a personal relationship with a good estate planning attorney. And I don't feel like I'm advertising for them, but it's really not scary. It's really not scary, and it's worth it. I really do think so.
I'm glad we talked about that, because I just know that there's all these different online forms that we can download, but you're right, things are going to change. And then if we change our paperwork, and then we've got all these different things out there, and then it becomes this big mess, and then all of a sudden it's not going to work at all because you've got different forms out there, and you don't know that you're covering all of your bases because you don't have somebody that is experienced asking you the right questions to make sure the right things are being done.
Right. And what if you've named a trustee on a piece of paper? Who do they go to? What attorney is going to guide them and show them how to do a trust, especially a special needs trust? So it's very important to have, advice and be able to pick up that phone and call that attorney for your fiduciary to be able to do that. If they're non-professional, your fiduciary has to know what attorney can we call to get information.
Right. Yeah. All right. I know I just, again, recently had my mom as my trustee, but she passed away in 2020, and that opened up this whole can of worms. And things had to be done, and I had to work with an attorney. And once I wrapped my head around it, she just asked me a few questions. She did the updates, and it was all over. It was done. So, yeah.
It's not hard.
Now I feel comfortable, because when I was in that limbo state, I was worried not having things done correctly.
So there's peace of mind. It's just to get it done, and then you have peace. It's done. It's set aside, and make sure those individuals know that you've named them or involved them, and also make sure that your doctors have your healthcare surrogate and living wills.
Oh, that's a really good thing. So then you take the copy of that original form and you send it to your doctors, and they put it in files somewhere, right? Like an online portal or whatever they do. Okay. Well, that's a good thing too. I've not done that, so I make sure I get that taken care of. So, all right. Well, this is really good. So I really encourage everybody to get a hold of your local estate planning attorney, whoever you can find, either through your local chamber or through a referral from a friend, but just get that ball rolling and put it on your calendar. Just do the first step, and then you'll be able to look back and say, okay, it's all done. And thank you, Shannah. I'm really happy that we had this chance to educate my audience about something that isn't a fun topic, but it's a necessary topic. Especially recently, we've had a lot of crazy things happen in Florida.
Right. COVID, a lot of people with COVID that didn't do estate planning. So
it was
very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody. If you learned anything, or if you decided to pick up your phone and get that appointment made with an attorney, maybe I encourage you to ask a friend to do the same thing, or a family member, just share that love so you can try to help other people get on the right page as well, or get on the right path with this as well. And of course, if you like our podcast, please go to whatever platform you listen and give us some love, subscribe, give us a review, an honest review. We'd love to be able to hear your feedback as we continue to get amazing guests like Shannah. So thanks, everybody. And thanks mostly, Shannah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Mastery Unleashed podcast, where we believe that everyone can have the business and life of their dreams by turning their mess into their greatest message and following their purpose to help the people who need their newfound wisdom and resources. To learn more, visit masteryunleashedpodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review to this show.